Love, Lost, Rebirth, Alive, Blue Dolphins. The novel, by Makāula Nakae. Chapter 3, Night of the Party. Episode 11, Hale the House. Before heading to Coco's house, they stopped by Jim's favorite florist in the Moiliili district. Finding a high-end florist open late was a challenge. While the stalls on Mauna Kea Street in Chinatown are legendary for their lei and tropical arrangements, that part of the city largely goes to sleep as the sun begins to dip. The two made quite a pair. Jim was dressed in a classic blue aloha shirt with an ocean motif, the fabric catching the late afternoon light. Hanalei, leaning into the warmth of the day, wore a vibrant orange aloha shirt dominated by large, bold hibiscus prints. In the islands, the aloha shirt is the great equalizer. Fitting for a beachside bar or a high-end dinner party, it serves as the uniform for Oahu's semi-formal life. As they browsed the cooler, their aesthetic differences surfaced again. Hanalei pointed out a soft, delicate bouquet of yellow and lime green roses, but Jim's eyes were fixed on a bundle of deep red anthuriums. The anthuriums were striking, their waxy, heart-shaped and ovary spathes looking almost like polished plastic. From the beige, tail-like spadices elected rose a scent that was hard to define, not the sweet floral perfume of a rose, but an otherworldly, mesmerizing fragrance. It was subtle yet strong, a green and earthy aroma that felt like the breath of a hidden rainforest. To Hanalei, the choice was a bit surprising. Jim definitely had a different kind of fashion or style sense, choosing flowers that Hanalei likely wouldn't have picked himself. The anthuriums looked androgynous, man-made sort of, neither masculine nor feminine, but possessing a fierce, independent beauty. Jim bought a dozen, their jagged silhouettes creating a stark contrast to Hanalei's softer sensibilities. They drove toward the ocean, winding through the quiet, palm-lined streets of Kāhala until they stopped a few blocks from Douglas's gingerbread house. Coco's current residence stood in sharp contrast to her neighbor's whimsical architecture. A modern, sprawling, single-story mansion with crisp white walls and a deep green roof. A massive circular pool sat before the grand entrance, its surface acting as a mirror for the soft evening sky. "Who is she?" Hanalei asked, his voice hushed as he took in the scale of the estate. "It's not her house, it's her parents'," Jim explained as they stepped out of the Mazda. "She's house-sitting until it sells to keep the burglars away." "Well, it will become hers eventually, right?" "Maybe, if it doesn't sell first," Jim remarked with a shrug. There are a lot of people with that kind of money moving in lately. In Honolulu, the social ladder is often built on family names and long-held land. Between the local families who built fortunes on sugar and shipping and the international millionaires buying up vacation retreats, there exists a specific class of trust fund kids, children of the sun who live off the interest of their parents' labor, floating through life in mansions they could never afford to buy themselves. As they walked toward the front door, the red anthuriums clutched in Jim's hand, Hanalei wondered if the luxury of this home would make Coco feel more like the Jane from the party, or if the rules she had broken that night still haunted her within these white walls. Though the large glass door was unlocked, a soft beeping sound from the alarm system echoed throughout the living room as they entered. Despite being a single-story house, the high ceilings created a spacious feel. Hanalei was drawn to a small chandelier near a skylight, likely made of Swarovski crystal. The difference between a high-end mansion in an upscale neighborhood and a regular house lies in the size, the quality of materials, and the meticulous design for convenience. The travertine marble floor was covered with a luxurious Persian rug. The minimal furniture indicated the house was staged for sale rather than for living. The large, modern, low-backed sofas were upholstered in beige leather, likely Scandinavian. They passed through an entertainment room with an expensive-looking glass table. Magazines on astrology, tarot cards, and yoga, along with a thick catalog from Neiman Marcus, were scattered on the table. The room was filled with the soft sound of Michael Nyman's orchestral score from the piano, playing from a built-in Bose stereo system. The room's lighting was primarily indirect, with recessed lighting creating a pleasant ambience. Small pendant lights hung above the kitchen's adjacent bar counter, where Douglas sat on a stool, flipping through a magazine. When Jim greeted him, Douglas responded, "Hello, Hanalei," putting him at ease. Hanalei wondered how Douglas had perceived the events at the tribal party. Behind the counter in the kitchen, Coco was preparing food with other guests. "Hello, beautiful," Jim greeted Coco, pressing a light kiss to both of her cheeks and presenting the bouquet of red anthuriums. The flowers were vibrant and strikingly immense. They commanded the room's attention, carrying the glossy, curated impression of a gift for a luxury boutique or high-end salon opening. "Oh, thank you for such a beautiful bouquet," she smiled, pulling Hanalei into a warm hug and kissing his cheeks as well. None of them truly grasped the weight of that floral choice. Even Jim hadn't realized why he had bypassed the softer roses for the rigid, androgynous anthuriums. It was a subconscious selection, perhaps an encouragement of Coco's fierce existence, or perhaps a silent foreshadowing of the secrets she didn't share with Hanalei, yet and the new friends waiting in the wings. "It's a magnificent house," Hanalei remarked, surprised to find himself feeling more relaxed than he had anticipated. "It's not mine, but thank you for coming. Please relax and enjoy yourself with everyone. Would you like a drink?" Jim asked, already deftly uncorking a bottle of white wine. He poured a glass for Hanalei, who nodded in thanks. The entire atmosphere was a departure from the typical local gathering. In Hawaii, a house party usually meant a sprawling backyard or beach barbecue, a chaotic and loud assembly of ohana and relatives that could easily swell into the dozens. This was something far more deliberate and polished. Coco introduced Hanalei to Becky and Alex before drifting back to her culinary duties. Becky was slim and petite, her long, straight black hair framing an exotic, slightly gothic appearance. Dressed in a sharp black dress, she carried the poise of a woman in her 40s. Her companion, Alex, was a handsome man in his late 30s, with short black hair and a manicured beard, dressed in deep navy club wear and black jeans. Hanalei noted Alex's proportions with a designer's eye. His shoulders were unusually broad, yet his hips seemed almost too narrow for typical adult male physiology. While he appeared to be a gay man, the way he and Becky flitted around each other was confusing. Their flirtation mirrored a standard heterosexual maneuver, yet Alex's vibe didn't sit clearly in any one category. Something in the way they interacted simply wasn't clicking for Hanalei, leaving him to wonder about the true nature of their bond. "Can I help with anything?" Hanalei asked Coco. Behind the offer was a quiet concern. He was still reeling from the tribal night's unexpected incident, where she had seemingly collapsed under the weight of his past. He suspected her gift and ability he'd started to recognize after her uncanny reading of Aiden for Jim. But seeing her now, he wasn't sure if she was truly recovered or just being a perfect host. "Could you finally chop that garlic?" she asked, pointing to a marble cutting board and a set of professional kitchen knives. She seemed composed, but Hanalei could still sense something unsettled in the way she avoided his direct gaze. "No problem," he replied, peeling the cloves while they chatted. He kept the conversation light at first, talking about his current clients, but as soon as Alex and Becky drifted out of the kitchen, he finally addressed the elephant in the room. "What happened that night?" He needed to hear her say it. Coco paused, the rhythmic sound of her knife hitting the board coming to a sudden halt. "That night? There's nothing to worry about. I do weird things sometimes." Before she could elaborate, a male voice spoke from behind them, startling Hanalei. "He's empathic, you know. You understand what that means, right?" Hanalei spun around to find a man in his 50s with a sturdy, local Hawaiian appearance. He was dressed in gray shorts and a crisp, neatly ironed light blue shirt, holding a brown paper bag. While Hanalei understood that being an empath meant absorbing others' emotions, He was struck by the fact that this man, Keala, had referred to Coco as him. Hanalei looked back at Coco, confused. "Oh, Keala, please stop it," Coco said, her voice strained. "I don't want to get into that topic right now. How are you feeling, darling?" Keala ignored the protest, greeting her with a kiss on both cheeks. Coco introduced Keala as a stylist for commercials who also ran his own modeling agency. He placed the bag by the sink, his eyes scanning the gourmet ingredients. "You didn't know?" Keala asked Hanalei, a mischievous glint in his eye. "No, I didn't," Hanalei replied. He was completely lost, unsure if Keala was talking about Coco's psychic abilities, her gender, or something else entirely. Coco saw his bewildered expression and almost laughed, but a flicker of embarrassment crossed her face, and she held it back. "Everyone's been talking about you lately," Keala said, flashing Hanalei a knowing smile. It was the familiar burden of the newcomer to be the fresh story, the new source of excitement or amusement in a tight-knit circle that had already heard everyone else's tales 1,000 times over. "What are they saying about me?" Hanalei asked, his curiosity piqued but guarded. Keala laughed, a bright, chirping sound, and winked. "Everyone's just hungry for gossip. You know how our community loves to talk, right? We're all here to find out everything about you." He shifted gears with the effortless fluidity of a social butterfly. "By the way, look at this wonderfully sweet taro bread I brought from Lane. Isn't it cute?" He held up the purple-tinted loaf and began slicing it to spread thick layers of butter. The kitchen grew even more crowded as Aiden and his companion arrived, greeting Coco with the customary light kisses. Shortly after, another guest walked in, a man named Scott. In his mid-40s, Scott was tall and strikingly handsome, possessing a grounded, rugged presence that immediately reminded Hanalei of a Hollywood icon like Harrison Ford. His vibe was distinct. Hanalei instinctively sensed he was likely straight. "Scott, I'm so glad you could make it," Coco said, stepping away from the stove to greet him. "Thank you for inviting me. This is a very luxurious house. I'm quite envious," Scott said with a hearty laugh. He casually threw an arm around Coco's shoulder, pulling her close as he kissed her on both cheeks. "What are you cooking tonight?" Coco's cheeks flushed a deep, evident pink. She seemed caught off guard by his easy physicality, a touch of genuine shyness peeking through her usual poised exterior. There was an undeniable air of flirting in Scott's casual confidence, a rugged, masculine energy that seemed to momentarily scramble Coco's composure. Hanalei watched the exchange, noting the rare crack in Coco's armor. It was fascinating to see the puma of the dance floor reduced to a blushing hostess by a simple gesture from a man who looked like he belonged on a movie set, rather than in a staged Kāhala mansion. "Oh, just a few simple things," Coco managed to say, her voice slightly higher than usual. Coco detailed the menu: steak, pasta, and simple vegetable dishes finished with balsamic and vinaigrette. Nothing too fancy for someone like you, Scott. She encouraged him to help himself to the appetizers and the exceptional selection of wines and liquors before heading into the entertainment room to mingle. Keala, still buttering his taro bread, caught Hanalei's eye and gave a subtle, wicked smirk. He had clearly seen this dynamic before. "I met him at another party, a gathering of lawyers, actually," Coco whispered back, her voice barely audible over the Michael Nyman score. She winked playfully. "I'm not sure if he's straight, bi, or even gay, so I invited him tonight to find out. Do you like him?" Hanalei asked. It wasn't meant to be blunt. He was just being straightforward, caught up in the easy intimacy of the kitchen. "Does it seem that way?" "I don't dislike him, but I'm not sure yet," she said, her smile reaching her eyes. To Hanalei, she seemed entirely genuine, a woman enjoying the mystery of a new attraction. He decided not to press further about Scott. "So, what should I do with this chopped garlic?" Hanalei asked. Coco looked down at the pile, and her eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Well, look at that. Rub that artistically chopped garlic into the steak." Then mix it with these herbs and some of this alia salt on both sides before we slide it into the oven. She handed him a small bowl of the coarse, red Hawaiian sea salt. The salt got its striking terracotta color from the volcanic red clay, alea, which was rich in iron and minerals and traditionally used in Hawaiian ceremonies for purification. Hanalei began to massage the mixture into the thick cuts of beef, the earthy scent of the clay, and the sharp tang of the garlic sticking to his fingers. The process was tactile and grounding, a stark contrast to the ethereal, psychic weight he had felt at the club. After the dinner preparations were complete, Coco asked Jim and Douglas to move the dining table onto the grass by the back door. The setting was striking. A huge swimming pool glowed with underwater lights, surrounded by dozens of flickering artificial candles. It felt like the terrace of a luxury hotel. Coco draped the table in crisp sheets and lit the centerpieces while Alex and Becky stayed out on the sun deck, lost in their own world of intimate, quiet flattery. In the kitchen, Hanalei finished rubbing the herbs and red sea salt into the steak, and Keala slid the tray into the oven to roast. With the work done, Hanalei stepped outside and found Jim smoking alone by the pool. He sat beside him, pulled a cigarette from his own pocket, and asked, "Why didn't you tell me about Coco?" Jim turned to face him, exhaling a long plume of smoke as he lit Hanalei's cigarette. It was the first time Hanalei had ever seen him smoke. "I thought you'd figure it out eventually," Jim replied simply. "I can't argue with that, but I just found out a little while ago." Jim looked directly into his eyes, his expression unusually calm. "But her beauty hasn't changed, right?" "Yes, I think so," Hanalei admitted. "So, what's bothering you?" In that moment, Hanalei experienced a profound realization. He thought back to the anthuriums, the bouquet that had seemed almost man-made and androgynous with its artificial texture and unusual, mysterious allure. He finally understood why Jim had subconsciously chosen them. They were a reflection of Coco herself. They fit her perfectly, a fierce, solar, and independent beauty that existed outside traditional categories. The flowers were feminine, yet possessed a masculine strength in their rigid form, mirroring a presence that didn't just ask for space, but commanded it. Sitting there in the twilight, Hanalei realized that his own shock wasn't about Coco's history, but about how perfectly she had crafted her own reality. Like the anthuriums, she was a masterpiece of intention, striking, slightly otherworldly, and possessing a beauty that was no less real for being so meticulously cultivated. The fragrance he had noted earlier, that green, earthy scent of a hidden rainforest, now felt like the true essence of her spirit, deep, rooted, and thriving in its own unique ecosystem. "Nothing really. I'm just surprised." "Her appearance is really," Hanalei trailed off, unable to find the words to describe the seamlessness of her transformation. "She looks like a woman," Jim said, finishing the thought for him. Hanalei nodded in agreement. Jim continued, "Anyone would think that when they see her. If she's happy with that, then I'm happy too. If she's happy with that." The words echoed in Hanalei's mind. In a world obsessed with labels and staged perfection, Jim's simple acceptance felt like the most honest thing in the room. Hanalei sensed a subtle weight in Jim's words, but chose not to probe further. Instead, he shifted the subject, asking if Jim had discovered anything new about Aiden. "No," Jim said, rolling his eyes with a slight, dismissive smile. "He mentioned he's seeing someone now, and a few other guys. Honestly, it doesn't matter to me anymore." He looked across the glowing water toward Becky and Alex, who were still caught in their intimate play on the sun deck. "Don't they seem a bit strange?" Hanalei asked. "Alex looks so gay, or is queer the word? It's so new to me. Yet he's flirting so naturally with Becky." "I thought the same thing," Jim agreed. "Is he bisexual? Or just straight?" In this environment where aesthetics were so carefully curated, anyone would wonder. The signals Alex sent were certain, yet the context was baffling. "Do you want to know the truth?" Jim asked, turning fully toward him. What is it? Hanalei asked, his brow furrowing. Jim nodded toward the mysterious, outside-the-box couple. That boy, Alex, Jim said, his voice dropping an octave, causing Hanalei to lean in. He used to be a girl. The silence that fell between them was sudden and heavy. Hanalei stared at Jim, then back at the boy by the pool. He used to be a girl? What nonsense are you talking about? Are you joking? Hanalei's voice rose in disbelief, but before Jim could answer, Douglas's voice drifted over them from the shadows. No, it's true. He's a transgender man who transitioned from female to male. Hanalei spun around to see Douglas looking back at him with a knowing, steady gaze. Hanalei instinctively covered his mouth with both hands, speechless. Want some weed? Douglas asked with a calm smile. Still wide-eyed, Hanalei turned his head back to the couple. Unbelievable, he looks like a man. He looks like a cute gay boy. If he were serious, he'd be approached by every other cute boy at a gay bar. I understand what you're trying to say, Jim said calmly. For them, the reality of their life was shifting beneath their feet, changing like a celestial conjunction they hadn't seen coming. At that point in their timeline, the new wave of cable TV dramas like Queer as Folk had just begun to hit, bringing sensational and astonishingly frank stories of gay and lesbian life into the light. Yet even in those shows, while drag queens were featured as witty, comedic, and theatrical pillars of the culture, a true transgender narrative was largely absent. Trans pride had not yet moved into the mainstream. It was still a bubbling force beneath the water, waiting to erupt. Outside of these private circles, the world remained a dangerous place for those whose true existence challenged the norms of the heterosexual, cisgender majority. There were still so many unfortunate events happening, a constant, painful reminder of the cost of living authentically in the shadows. Oh my God, it's like seeing a miracle, Hanalei whispered, finally tearing his gaze away from the sun deck. Exactly, Douglas added. The shock left Hanalei restless. He stood up, muttering, I need a drink. Jim asked him to bring back a glass of red wine. Before he moved, Douglas offered him the pipe. Hanalei took a deep puff, feeling the smoke bloom in his chest before passing it to Jim. The night was no longer just a dinner party. Under the artificial candles and the Kāhala moon, the world was revealing itself to be far more complex, beautiful, and fluid than the warrior on the dance floor had ever imagined. The party after the tribal event had truly just begun. To be continued. Swim and listen to the historical gay drama in the center of the Pacific. We are releasing a brand new episode every single day until the epic conclusion of the story. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 15 to 45-minute hit of cinematic historical drama set in the tropical islands of Hawaii, the perfect daily plunge into the shattered world a millennium after 9/11. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full novel now. Bookmark Blue Dolphins. The Novel Playlist, A Great Argead Saga, Alexine, Volume 1, Talesius Playlist, Volume 2, Sacred Band Playlist, and Divine Oracle. Unwritten words behind my novel playlist. Subscribe to follow the waves and currents of Forbidden Paradise love tales. Comment below.